Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Pharmacy Pathways. I'm very excited for today's guest and today's topic because it has been highly requested. Today, we are talking about nuclear pharmacy. We have Dr. Alvin Blackmon, who has over 10 years of experience in nuclear pharmacy specifically, and he also has experience with practicing nuclear pharmacy in the military as well. So he's going to be able to share a couple of perspectives for us. So without further ado, I introduce to you Dr. Alvin Blackman.
Hello, yeah, welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. As I mentioned, this field is very niche and it's highly requested. I definitely have the questions prepared to talk about nuclear pharmacy. But before we get into that, I do just want to hear a little bit about, who you are, a little bit about your background and how you were introduced to pharmacy in the first place.
Okay. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I thought about maybe being a doctor or maybe a vet or anything. I actually wanted to be an engineer. And after Calculus 3, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So I said, no, let me find another pathway. And I like pharmacy. I had an opportunity to meet someone at a grocery store and they told me about the field. And I love chemistry and also math. So from that point, applied to Xavier, got accepted, went to the PharmD program. And when I graduated, I've always wanted to serve. So I had that opportunity. As soon as I graduated, I went straight into the military. So that was a good experience. After getting into the military, it allowed me to do non-traditional jobs. This in turn actually led me to wind up doing a short course in the Army. So at that time, the Army had like a 1 week short course for oncology and a 1 week short course for nuclear. So I decided to actually do the nuclear short course 1 week. And at that point, after doing it 1 week, man, I loved it. I loved it. I wish when I was in pharmacy school, when they had that as an elective rotation, I would have chosen. But at the time, I was like, who wants to get up at 4, 3 in the morning, right? And then with radiation, do I want to have another arm or leg? So, those are just things you look back at. But yeah, so that 1 week was wonderful. So loved the experience. So at the time, the Army actually had specialized residencies. They had residencies in oncology and nuclear. So what I wanted to do is, so I applied for the nuclear pharmacy residency, a PGY2 residency. I got accepted and wound up doing the residency. So that's 1 year of intense training and I loved it. Not easy, but I did it. And after you graduate from your residency, usually you do a utilization tour. So you're going to work in the field at least for 3 years. So after that point, I wound up going to my first duty station, which was in Fort Gordon, Georgia. So,
Yeah.
but definitely different than regular pharmacy. For me, I don't know. I know we're talking about nuclear, but a little bit about the Army side. Normally, when you go into the military, usually you're going to staff for a very short time, but you're going to be in management. You're going to be in charge of a lot of people. So it was okay, but I really like something different. I like specialization. And so this was a wonderful opportunity that the military offered.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that background. Before we go into nuclear a bit, I just want to have a simple definition broken down. What is nuclear pharmacy? What would healthcare be like if it didn't exist, right? Just to give us an idea of where it really fits into the world of healthcare and pharmacy.
Very good question, because a lot of people ask me, okay, what is nuclear pharmacy? What is that? So I get that question all the time. In nuclear medicine, we're actually looking at the functionality of how the body's working, normally or abnormally. For example, we can look at stress tests. Some people don't realize that, we can look at the blood flow in the heart. How does the heart working when it's not stressed and when it's stressed? And it allows us to do that. So these are non-invasive procedures and diagnostic things that we can do to assess how the body is functioning. We can look at the kidneys, are they functioning properly? So definitely a huge amount from the diagnostic side. Now, nuclear pharmacy or nuclear medicine is about maybe 70% diagnostics, but we also in therapeutics as well.
What I'm hearing is that you are working with radioactive products in order to diagnose and also to provide therapy.
Right. For radiation, we use the minimum amount of radiation as possible. Some people are scared. Well, man, that's a lot of exposure. Not really. You can get more exposure really getting a procedure like an X-ray or when you're traveling on an airplane.
And you mentioned something that, you mentioned it when you were introducing yourself, and you also hinted to it now, is the fear of the consequences of being exposed to radiation. And when you're making that your career, right, being a nuclear pharmacist, there is a big fear of, oh, well, I don't want to expose myself and so forth. Can you address that? Let's address the elephant in the room as far as radiation exposure with nuclear pharmacists.
For nuclear pharmacy, we have occupational exposure, and that's regulated by the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and there's limits that are set, and they're monitored monthly, quarterly, and annually, and they ensure that our limits are within standards. It's very safe. Remember, I said we use the minimum amount of radiation as
Mm.
possible. So, and those are things. And we have ring dosimeters that we put on our ring when it measures our external radiation that we're exposed to. And also, we have a batch dosimeter that measures our exposure from our body. So, very regulated. Even women that are pregnant can work in the field. It's just that their limits will be lower than the normal limits.
Wow. Most people would probably assume that pregnant women would not be in the room at all. That's helpful because that helps us gauge the level of safety that's involved if a pregnant woman can be in the room. Awesome. Well, I do want to address the NRC. You said Nuclear Regulatory Committee. What exactly are they measuring?
So they're measuring amount of REM, amount of exposure that you have. There's a certain amount of exposure that we should have per year, and so they look at that. Our radiation safety officer. So most of when we deal with radiation, we have an RSO, which is a radiation safety officer. So they'll track our numbers to make sure that our RAM exposure rate is within limits. Because once you reach a certain limit per year, you can't go in and work in the field anymore. So it's very important to ensure that. Now that rarely happens, not in the nuclear medicine world. Now, if you're working at a nuclear reactor, their exposure rate is totally different exposure rate than we have. The kit that I was telling you that we make, that container is lead shield. The syringe shields that I'm drawing out have lead shield. An L block where I'm reaching in to compound medication, actually, everything is shielded, but you still have some type of exposure that you're going to receive.
I'm feeling like I would be okay with now stepping into the room. And there are different settings in nuclear pharmacies. You shared with me prior to us recording that nuclear pharmacists can work in hospitals or centralized commercial pharmacies. Based on your experience, can you compare and contrast the different environments that nuclear pharmacists can work in?
You asked me the differences, right?
Yes. So your radiology lab is in a hospital.
Right. So I'm in a
Okay.
hospital setting, right? So now
Okay.
there are other opportunities that you have where you can work in a commercial pharmacy like a Cardinal. Now, for this sense is a little different because, like I said, in the nuclear side, for me working in a hospital, a nuclear technicians I'm exposed to, you're in the hospital setting. Even after they inject the radiopharmaceutical into the patient, I can look and see how the scans are. But in a commercial pharmacy like a Cardinal, it's just you're like in a strip mall where you could be and you're compounding. Those hours are a little different because they may have three shifts where they have to be at work maybe at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then they may not leave until like the graveyard shift. So those are a little different. You have drivers that once you make the radiopharmaceutical, there's drivers that are going to deliver those to hospitals. For me, it was a little different because I worked in-house and whatever I made, we dispensed to our patients. But from the commercial side, if you want to do that route, which isn't a bad route, but you don't have any patient interaction with the commercial side.
So in the hospital setting, you are dealing with the patients that are coming in for their appointments of that day. For the commercial pharmacy setting, you're going into a building and you're preparing orders, so to speak. You don't know that you don't have patients on the agenda, but you're preparing them so that they can be picked up by a driver and taken to wherever they need to go to then be later dispensed to patients.
Correct, yes. So that's the difference. And, I love my experience in nuclear medicine in a hospital setting. I had a chance to go and visit like the commercial. And even when I was in my last year of pharmacy school, I had a chance to see that. And it's nice, but I really like it's the pharmacy, the hospital side, because You can review patient charts, and it was just different. It all depends on what you like.
You feel like, those in the hospital setting still get a little bit more clinical exposure than those who might be preparing the, bulk orders?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely I would. And there's also opportunities to, you do have like regulatory, if you want to work for the FDA and stuff that you can do. Now, those jobs most likely are be where, you're not in the lab, but you're ensuring that the regulations is that we're following regulations. So that's a good thing. You have the manufacturing side where you can actually work with a radiopharmaceutical company. So those are opportunities. And we do have, believe it, nuclear pharmacists in those roles. And also we have the clinical side where you can work on in the clinical aspect, like NIH as well.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to try to memorize everything you said. Hospital pharmacy, commercial pharmacy where we're making, bulk orders, federal and regulatory. We can work in clinical. Did I miss anything?
No, you're right. You're right on point. Yes.
Okay. I want people to know all of their options. I want to talk about now what your day to day is like. So I know you may not be able to speak for the other industries that you don't have experience in, but going back to something else you said, right? Have to be an early bird, probably waking up around 3 a.m. to make sure you're at work at 5.
Yeah, definitely. You're definitely waking up early for that. So that's one
Okay.
thing. And that's some people may say, oh, I don't want to do that. But I mean, if you can wake up early at 5 and be at home by 3 or at least by 3:30, I mean, it's just how nuclear is. And that's something you just have to be aware of. Most of my time has been in the nuclear pharmacy in a hospital setting. And then I'll touch on what I do now as I'm a consultant working with investigational drugs, radiopharmaceuticals, with a government entity. So from the nuclear medicine side, at least there, you at least have to be there at 5 o'clock. Before you start, usually the day before is prep work, right? We got to prep. We got to make sure we have the appropriate drugs, make sure we have enough activity. A generator that comes in and it's only good for 2 weeks. We need to make sure we have enough activity from that generator. And there's some kit preparations that actually have to be boiled. So at least your first hour or two really is just prepping to get ready for that first patient that'll come in at 7 o'clock. So you're in the lab, you're compounding your kits, you're doing quality assurance. So for the first 2 hours, it's really hectic. Now remember, for me, it was just me, and I did have a technician every now and then, but for me, it was just me working in the lab and getting all this done. So once everything's done, once you draw your doses off, you're ready. Now that patient comes in, and now we have to. Now the nuclear technologist can take that drug and inject into the patient. We also have situations where they may add on procedures while you're there. So you have to do that. But it's very intense. So usually from 5 o'clock, really up until 10 or 11, you're going to be busy. From that standpoint, now you're seeing what you have for the next day, what's going for the next day. So, and if there is anything that we need, and then you also remember you're going to do chart review too, right? You're going to review the patient's chart for the next day. Since I'm in the hospital setting, if there's any questions, I can talk to the nuclear physician, even oncology, because oncology and nuclear medicine, we kind of work together in a sense. If a person is going through cancer, and those are things that we can do when they're getting a PET scan, we can look and see, if the cancer is metastasized or if it's not.
Okay.
So usually you show up at 5, usually out by 3 o'clock. So those are really good hours. You could be on call if something happens on a weekend, if they need a procedure, they could call you in. But the hours are pretty good from that standpoint. And that was just my experience that I have though. Like I said, we talked about from the commercial side that I didn't do much of just doing that. Now, currently what I do now, I'm in the consultant side. So I don't have to get up early. I can actually work from home if I need to. But we have a lot of radiopharmaceuticals that are coming up that are investigational that we have to read the protocol, ensure if within NRC standards. So, and that's the input that I offer now to where I work currently. So it's a no on call, which I didn't mind, but I really like working in a lab
Mhm.
and, Monday through Friday. And if I need to work from home, I can, but it's not a necessity. Nuclear pharmacy, if you're in like the lab, you can't work that from home. But like I said, there's other opportunities out there that can work from home, or at least you're not in the lab setting.
For those who are working in the pharmacies where they're getting those orders out to be sent to, over 100 hospitals, what's their
Right.
shift like?
So their shifts, they have like usually are 3 shifts. So you may have a 3 o'clock shift where you start, and then you may have a second shift that may be like maybe from maybe 12 to 7, or then and then a late shift. So, and a lot of people don't want the graveyard shift, right? So those are shifts where I think from 10 to 7 or whatever, and they're on call as well. So, like, say something happens at a hospital setting, because remember, all hospitals don't have nuclear pharmacists. They need a drug. They'll call the commercial pharmacy, and that pharmacist will have to come in. And so you're on call as well, though. Knowing talking to my friends, some of them are on call at least maybe like once a month where you're on call. So it just depends. But those are things you just have to be aware of.
Okay, so they
And if you don't like
operate.
patient, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, yeah, you mentioned it's that's usually the environment for folks who probably don't wanna be, more hands-on with patients, but they have 3 shifts to choose from, essentially, in that environment when they're going in.
Right. And unfortunately, being the new person, you probably get the graveyard shift probably. I mean, not that you would, right? But you just I'm sure no one usually people don't want to work that shift. But there's 3 possible shifts though. And I shouldn't say that because some people may like that shift.
You said the graveyard shift, so that one is 3 to.
No, it'd be like say like from 10 to 7. And remember, their goal is normally nuclear pharmacy is pretty much done really probably maybe about like 5 or so, right? So it can vary, but some people may not want to be on the late shift there.
Okay, so it sounds like if you're on the graveyard shift, you may not be as busy, you're likely not as busy, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, you're there from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. It's all about preference.
And the one thing for nuclear pharmacy, there are jobs out there, but you may have to move to those locations. And so you may have to be willing to uproot and move to a certain area.
Are you saying that because it's just not as common for nuclear pharmacy roles to be open and available?
Right, so they are open, but the question is really the location. And if you have to be willing to say, "Hey, you know what? I love the DMV, but, there's a job opportunity in Richmond, or there's a job opportunity in Florida." But you may have to, if you're willing to uproot and move.
Excuse me. I hope you don't mind if I cut in for a moment.
Hurry up.
Number one, thank you for watching. I hope you're learning something new in this episode. Number two, which is the reason I'm here, is if you don't mind, could you be so kind and like this video or hit the subscribe button?
I mean, I've always subscribed.
By subscribing, you're letting YouTube know that my content is providing you value, and that ultimately helps the channel grow and reach more people who need to hear these conversations. You can also subscribe to the Pharmacy Pathways newsletter to get access to exclusive episode content. Newsletters go out in the same week of the episode. You'll receive a structured summary of each interview, expanded guest bios, and exclusive sneak peeks of future episodes. Subscribe at pharmacypathways.org. Link is in the description. Oh, and one more thing.
Hurry up!
If there's a specific topic or career you'd like to see featured, you can let me know by filling out the audience feedback survey on my website. And if you'd like to be a guest, there's a guest sign-up form on my website as well. Both of those links are in the episode description. Okay, let's get you back to the show. I wanted to ask a question. Well, I wanted to ask you to expand more on something you've already shared. And you mentioned different processes that you're doing. Can you walk us through some of those more unique compounding processes?
So we have one procedure where it's called a gastric emptying study. So this is where we actually take an egg. So we're in the lab, we're frying an egg, and we're putting a radiopharmaceutical in it. Now, this is a gastric emptying study, and they use sulfur. So we inject that into the egg. We make it for the patient. So they have bread. We have to, toast the bread and all this for the patient, and the eggs and everything. And they'll eat an egg sandwich. And the patient eats this. And we track, we want to see how is their gastric working from beginning to end. But the idea that we're actually in a lab making egg, right, is something. Now we have other studies as well. So we actually have where we can tag someone's red blood cells. So the nuclear technologist, whoever, will get the patient's blood. We'll take it, we'll tag with radiation, and then we'll actually give it back to the so they can inject to the patient. Now, this is called a MUGA study, a multi-gated acquisition scan, where we want to look at the patient's ejection fraction. So, as we know with chemo drugs, they can be cardiotoxic, right? So we want to really see a baseline how the heart's working before, and then we'll do that study again after chemo. So that's a unique thing. And we also have another procedure where when we take their red blood cells, we get the red blood cells from the patient. So I actually had in my lab, I actually had a where I could boil the red blood cells where they can be damaged. And then we inject it back in the patient. Damaged red blood cells go into the spleen. So when we inject it back into the patient, it's going to go to the spleen. So we can look to see, hey, if a patient's had a splenectomy, is there any spleen still remaining? We can look at the functionality of the spleen. So as you can see, there's a lot of things you can do with that. And so you're handling people's blood. So safety is always important because we want to make
Yeah.
sure we don't stick ourselves. The last one, the one that I really like is when we do a white blood cell study. So we get the patient's blood, we separate the plasma, and then we tag their white blood cells. And after tagging that, we inject it back into the patient. Now, this procedure can take almost 2 to 3 hours to do. But from this particular procedure, we're going to look to see if there's any infections in the body. So, but it's a huge thing to do a white blood cell study because you're at least 2 to 3 hours that you're dealing with this procedure in the lab.
Correct me if I'm wrong, all of these were diagnostic procedures?
Right. So these are all diagnostic. And thank you for remembering that. Like I said, I think about 70% of what we do is diagnostic. So this is all diagnostic. For a white blood cell study, that's something that a hospital wouldn't do if they didn't have a nuclear pharmacist. Majority, they'll reach out to the commercial pharmacies to have that done. And remember, also, too, you have a certain time as well for the white blood cell study. So once you get that blood, you may have a 5-hour turnaround that you have to do the tagging and inject it back into the patient. So time is an essence, and time
Wow.
is your enemy in a sense. And remember, radiation constantly decays. So, and that's the thing too, I didn't probably talk about is that, there's all type of radiation. There's alpha radiation, there's beta radiation, there's gamma. Alpha is pretty nice because your skin can stop you or a piece of paper. Beta, aluminum foil can stop that. And for gamma radiation, which is ideal for imaging, you'll need lead. So these are all the things that you're factoring in. So remember, I'm tagging, I'm doing all this, and also I'm making sure that I'm reducing my exposures as low as reasonably achievable as I can. That's a mouthful. Sorry. I get happy when I talk about the lab being a lab.
No, that was so helpful. And then on the therapeutic side, do you have any examples for the therapeutic prepping that you're doing procedures?
So for the theranostics, things have really changed in nuclear medicine. In the last 10 to 15 years, the theranostics have really just expanded what we do. Because like I said, majority of what we do is diagnostic. We also do have a little bit of therapy before I go into that, where if we want to look at the functionality of the thyroid gland, we can give a capsule 123 to a patient, image their thyroid gland, we can see how it's functioning. Say if they have hypothyroidism, we may want to remove the thyroid gland. So we would do an ablation, and so it's a 131 capsule that will get rid of the thyroid gland. And that's what we've done in the past for therapy. But now with the theragnostics, it's a total game changer, and it's really an expanded pharmacy and also offer a lot of job possibility as well. So let's look at theranostics, right? So remember, diagnostics is what we do. So now what we can do is say a person has a tumor, we can diagnostically see is this particular drug receptive to that tumor cell. Once we find that out, now we can turn around and now we can treat that tumor. And now we're only in this target radiation, it's only specific for that cancer cell. So the surrounding tissue around it is still left intact versus your chemo in a sense that you have to kill the good with the bad. So yeah,
Mm.
so theranostics are really expanding. We work more with the theranostic, you work more with oncology as well, but definitely a good avenue because target is really where you want it, where you can actually diagnose, find it, and then also treat it.
It's awesome to see how advanced medicine is becoming, and then how this also presents more opportunities for people to get into nuclear pharmacy. I want to shift to how people resonate with the day to day, the things that we enjoy, the things that we are passionate about, what's built into our nature. Are we a morning person? Are we a late night person? Like, what are some other characteristics of the role that people should probably know about so that they can gauge whether they would be a good fit or not?
Attention to detail is very important. What you're dealing with, you're dealing with radioactivity. And so are you okay with being in a lab preparing stuff? you know, that's something you have to be aware of. We already talked about the morning thing. Okay, you have to have that, or at least be willing to do that. But those are some things that are really good. And you do work with additional healthcare personnel as well. So you have to be able to at least work through. You're talking to doctors, you're talking to different people, and you just have to be able to, like, if you see something, how can you solve it? Because remember, we're doing quality assurance. Everything we're doing all of this. So, we don't cut corners. We want to make sure, because it's up to you for that patient, sure that they get the correct dose. Has it happened? Yes, you've had situations where you say you make a kit, say you make a heart kit where we're going to look at someone's blood flow, but you accidentally give them a bone kit. That can happen. So you have to be there. Even when I had people in my space, I had to ensure to make sure that they were doing the right thing. So it's a
Okay.
lot of attention to detail, and you just have to be there. It's not a time to go in and just have a good time. Now, I do enjoy what I do, but at a certain point, we just want to make sure that we're giving the right drug and the right dose to the patient.
That's really good for us to keep in mind. And in these settings, you are very, very hands-on. Does it require a certain level of what is the word? Dexterity, where we have to be
You know
very
what?
stable surgeon hands?
So you want to draw your right dexterity. So you don't want to take forever to draw this dose up. Because remember, you're increasing your exposure. You want to get in there, draw it up, and you're done. So you have to
Okay.
be at least able to do that. And not able to do that because, say you are a slow drawer, you'll at times get used to that. When we're in inpatient and when you draw something, they say, okay, make sure to equalize that pressure because you don't want to have anything come out. Well, with radiation, you do want to make sure you do that. And at times does that happen? Yes, but yeah, very good with your hands in a sense. And if not, working in the field for a while, you'll get used to that.
Okay. And for those who want to go into regulatory and clinical, FDA or NIH, do they usually have those roles available for folks who are coming right out of training, or do they usually are they usually looking for folks who have already had some skin in the game, time in the lab, time working with the products, who then are ready to trans over because you're at a consultant level at that point?
Right. So I totally agree with you there. And that's a good question. Yes, you're going to have to spend some time in the field before those particular roles happen for you. Nuclear pharmacy is specialized. Yes, you're a pharmacist. Can you just jump in a nuclear pharmacy lab? No, no, you can't do that. You actually have to have at least specialized training, become an authorized user. So what is an authorized user? So you at least have to have 700 hours. Now, of that 700, 200 has to be didactic. The other 500 is like on the job training. So that's the bare minimum. Now, there's certain schools that actually offer that 200 hours to the didactic part. I think it's five: University of Arkansas, University of New Mexico, University of Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Purdue. I think that's five, right? Are those five? I think
We'll put it on the screen for folks so that
okay.
they can see it.
So now Purdue University is really one of our standout universities because they actually manage our board certification, continuing education. So definitely, if you're in nuclear pharmacy, look up Purdue University, look at their nuclear pharmacy. They have a lot of things going on. So, and they offer a nuclear pharmacy certificate program where you can do 200 hours. All those universities do. Now, if you're in pharmacy school at those universities, it's actually nice because if you do graduate it, you'll graduate as an authorized user because within those 4 years, hopefully you'll be able to get the 500. So the certificate only is for 200 hours, and that course can be between 5 to 8,000, and then the 500 is on the job training, of course. So yes, so you just can't walk in. So once you get that, you become an authorized user. You're gonna work in pharmacy. And it's pretty good too if you want to get hired, because remember, you got to at least put some skin in the game. An employer, they're going to look to see, hey, have you had any training in uh, nuclear pharmacy? So having an authorized user makes you more marketable. Can you come in without having that? Yes, you can. But the challenge is that the company would have to pay to train you. And they've done that on occasion, but we want to be more marketable as we can.
So to become an authorized user, we are investing to go through a training program, and the investment is about, excuse me, $5,000 to $8,000. And
Yeah, you're looking to spend that, yeah.
okay, and how long is this program?
So it's only 200 hours. It's depending on you. You're looking at least probably a month to 2 months of training. Now, once you complete that training, now the 500 hours that you need for on the job, you got to find some place to work. Now you can work free, you can intern. So those are some place to get those 500 hours that you need.
Okay,
So
thank
that
you. That
course
I
is
think
only
that's where I was wondering, where does the 500 come from? Okay.
Yes, and believe it or not, you know, a lot of times if people love free labor, right? So hey, you make and this could be a challenge too for someone who's say you've already are in pharmacy and you want to transition. Hey, how do I get those 500 hours? You may have to squeeze it in with your current job. But once you have the 500 hours, now you're an authorized user. And now if you did come and apply for a job, they know that, hey, you're at least qualified to work in a nuclear pharmacy or for the activity.
And for a student pharmacist who is in pharmacy school, can they start interning in their like fourth year or at a separate internship and start working on those 500 hours early?
So, that would be ideal for a pharmacy student. Even in your P1 and P2 year, if you can start interning. There's paid internships and non-paid. If you have an opportunity for internship, regardless if you're being paid or not, do it. The most important thing is networking, get your foot in the door, and then you get to see, do you really want to be a nuclear pharmacist? Because the mistake that I had is when I got to my last year of rotation, I should have, when I look back, it was an elective and I should have probably did it. It would have maybe changed my world. I'm not sure. But I do regret that. So yes, like definitely look at the internship possibilities that you have. And, a lot of times the fact that you want to learn, and if you can have those opportunities, seize it and do it, and it at least sets you up better. And if you don't like it, okay, fine. Then this is not for you. You don't need to
Yeah.
waste your time on it.
What I'm hearing is that the authorized user hour requirement, they will honor hours that you put in previously before even getting into the program, as long as they were in the nuclear pharmacy categories that fall under eligibility.
So it's kind of like a preceptor, though. So I've been a preceptor as well. So your 500 hours that you have, you'll have to at least attain at a nuclear pharmacy. So, but definitely get your foot in the door, get those internships if you can, and that's just authorized users. So I'm actually board certified too. So that means that my requirement that I have to be board certified, you need at least 4,000 hours in nuclear medicine. So I've at least obtained that. So that's another level that you can do. It's not a requirement. You don't have to be board certified, but it's another level of training that I
Yeah, you
wanted.
you shared that with me that the board certification for nuclear pharmacy was actually the first BPS certification.
Yes, yes, we at least can claim that we are, we were the first. Now, the good thing about being board certified when I was in the military, because I mean, I really wanted to pursue that, right? I wanted to get additional education, but in the military, they actually paid you more money if you were board certified.
Okay.
Now,
You're
the one thing I
phrasing
have
that as
noticed,
if that's not the case.
no, no, it still is. It still is. They
Okay.
still do that. But in the civilian side, I noticed it's nice that you're board certified, but they don't pay you additional money for being board certified. It's nice that you did it, but hey, that's good. But at least in the military setting, we had that. So that was an incentive as well to ensure to be board certified,
Yeah,
but just
good.
to bring that topic up.
No, that's something that I also wanted to talk about. In order to qualify for the exam, you need 4,000 hours in the field.
Right, at least 4,000. So when I did my residency, that was 1 year, and then I at least had to practice for another year, and then I could sit for my board certification. It does help you with if you are trying to, because job wise, because a lot of people ask, well, what do you make as a nuclear pharmacist, right? I mean, it can vary in location, but you're looking about maybe 140 to $200,000. Being board certified you won't be at the bottom, and I can assure you that.
No, that's important to know, especially as a practicing pharmacist, or even a student where you need to start making money. The student loans are piling on because a $5,000 to $8,000 investment when you've already invested so much into pharmacy school, even for a pharmacist who is debating like, well, do I want to, take a pay cut for a little while and invest here so that I can eventually make more in the long run. That's really good for us to think about when we're, strategizing. Does this make sense? Is this better in the long run? And
Right,
40
yeah.
to 200,000 is on the upper end, I would say nowadays for what pharmacists are making. So that's good for people to know.
We are a subspecialty, right? Require special training. So that's the thing of that no one can just walk in, which is a good thing. The one thing I would touch about loans too. I mean, I know we're not talking about Army Pharmacy, but the one thing I would say is that, definitely if you are the military routes may be a good thing, but they had loan repayment programs too. So, when I graduated and after 5 years, I was loan free with the military. So definitely those opportunities that come up, definitely, seize them if you can.
Now more than ever, we need to be, looking into our options to make sure that we can afford school or have ways to pay back school once we leave with our loans. And with the BPS, we're doing continuing education to keep that right active in addition to our license as pharmacists and whatever state we're practicing in. Any other continuing educations that go into being a nuclear pharmacist?
No, just a required. I mean, so for us, we need at least complete 100 CE within a 7 year period. So I mean, that's really not that difficult to do, but it's a lot because yes. So I have my nuclear that I have to do, and then also my regular pharmacy CEs. Now they're both equivalent, of course, you know. Um, but you want to be diverse in both. Thank goodness, we get recertified every 7 years. So what some people do is because they don't want to pay the money, it's very expensive. They just let it lapse and they just retake the test, right? You know, yeah,
No.
I'm not a fan of tests. I'm like, no, let me just keep up my continuation.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but the BCPS exam was, I want to say like almost 5 hours. I'm not going through that
Yeah,
again. I am not going through that again. It's better to keep it active. And with that, just so people know that that also requires a yearly renewal fee as well.
yeah, and that's a good point too. We pay a lot of money to take our boards, and then we still have to pay a renewal fee, which I'm okay with.
I I now want to, as we're shifting towards closing, I do want to leave folks with actionable steps that they can take. They had some curiosity, they see the podcast and they're like, you know what? I think I need to really look into this more. What are 3 things that they could do in the next few weeks to start getting this in motion for them?
Are we talking about pharmacy students or people who are already pharmacists?
That's a good question. Let's first answer that for pharmacy students, and then
Okay.
we'll do that separately for pharmacists.
Okay. So let's focus on the pharmacy students. You know, from P1 to P4, definitely if you have the opportunity, I would say if the rotation is there for nuclear pharmacy, definitely think about it. Worst case scenario, if you're really not sure, call that radio pharmacy because we have them in every city. There's a radio pharmacy, believe it or not. Say, hey, I'm interested, thinking about it. Can I come by a day just to watch? And at least get that experience to see, hey, it's something you really want to do. And if you like it, definitely seize that opportunity and do that. If you're at that P4 stage, at your P1 through P3, you have a little bit of flexibility in time, as we talked about it. Look at the internships, see what internships they have out there. Hey, can I work? And sometimes just say, you know what? I'm okay with working free. I know that's a difficult thing to think about it, but hey, remember the goal is to get your foot in the door, get the experience and network and leverage that when you graduate. And remember, you get your foot in the door and you can start. And if they like you, they can say, hey, we'd love for you to come work. And then we can work on getting an authorized user. Because remember, the authorized user is a very important thing because it allows you to work with radiopharmaceuticals. So I would say from there, look online and see there's videos and stuff that shows what we do in the lab. So if you just want to get a bird's eye view of what we do and just see if it's something that you like and just look it up and just research about it. So let's focus on as a pharmacist, right? So it's a
Yeah.
little different as a pharmacist because, we all have obligations when we graduate, either tons of loans or stuff like that, right? So your best effort is to reach out as well, see, hey, do you want to volunteer for one? But because remember, you need an authorized user, which shows that you're able to work. And you're going to need to eventually get that. And to get that, you're going to have to work. Remember, to be an authorized user, we need 700 hours, 500 on the job training, 200 can be didactic. So, hey, find out a place that maybe you have an opportunity to work at. Now, you don't have to do that, but you will have to take that certificate program. And a lot of it's online. Some of it is, so you can kind of do that. But you need to do that, so you're going to have to at least spend a little bit of money just to get in that frame. But reach out and just find out there's nuclear pharmacists. Believe it or not, there's nuclear pharmacists. When you go to the APHA conferences, which I do go to, you'll run into this and get that name, say, hey, I'm really interested. Because we love to expose people interested in the field. And then once you have that training, it opens up a different world for you because when you're applying for a job, a lot of them do say, hey, we want you to be board certified, but that's not an absolute. Even if you're not board certified and they see, hey, this person has really worked and done that, they may hire you still and just want to train you.
Thank you. That was very helpful. The pharmacy student has time to strategize what they're going to do with
Yes.
their they don't get a lot of free time, but there is free time that is available to them where they can, instead of working at a library, they can work now in a nuclear pharmacy. If they don't have internships available, they can just call up a pharmacy that they find online and say, hey, can I come in and shadow? And then for pharmacists, keeping in mind that those 200 hours, most of that can be done online, but then they do have to kind of readjust what they're doing on a day to day to make sure that they are able to fulfill the 500-hour requirement.
Yes, you said it in a nutshell. See?
Okay, that sounds good. They have actionable steps, and you also mentioned you shouted out the 5 programs that you're aware of that have those programs, certificate programs. We'll put that in the description, like I mentioned before.
And I'm here. I love when people ask me about the field and stuff. I have no reason to, if they want to talk to me or something like that.
So, are you saying that they can reach out to you and ask questions?
Yes. Yeah, if they need to, that's all.
Okay. Where can they find you? Your LinkedIn?
Yeah, they can find me on my LinkedIn.
Okay, we'll put the LinkedIn link in the description as well. Before we end today, is there anything else that you would like to share that you think they should know about?
Right. The one thing I would say is, the world is totally changing in a sense. Anything you want, you could look up and try to figure out what's going on. Like I said, the one regret that I have is that I really should have did more research and finding out what I want to do. Now, nuclear pharmacy is my world and I love being in it. But, don't be scared or hesitant to things you're not aware of or things you're not really sure of because it can open up a lot of doors for you. There's so many different things in pharmacy that you can do. Nuclear is one of them, oncology. So don't be stuck because I know sometimes, we look and say pharmacy is saturated. Well, for certain jobs, it is saturated. But, every, things are coming out, opportunities. So just don't give up. And hey, there's people out there that will definitely tell you about what they do.
Yes. Hence you coming on the show. So thank you. And that is exactly what this platform is here for, to expose them to the different things that they have to consider so that they don't feel pigeon-toed into one area where they can feel more fulfilled with what they do. So Thank you so much for your time today. I hope that everyone had a lot of questions answered, the things that were asked, that they were able to satisfy your curiosity enough to at least take the next step, or it might, also serve you in saying, nope, I don't think I want to take that direction either. So, whatever it may be, we hope it served you. And we thank you for joining us on this episode of Pharmacy Pathways. And thank you, Dr. Alvin Blackman. Everyone stay blessed and stay curious. We are out. You just watched an episode of Pharmacy Pathways, a podcast created to help current and future pharmacists find their happy place in life. I'm your host, DomThePharmacist, and I interview different pharmacists from various careers, asking them the questions you'll likely need answered in order to know if that particular role aligns with your interests, passions, skill sets, and talents. If there's a specific topic or career you'd like to see featured, you can let me know by filling out the audience feedback survey on my website. And if you'd like to be a guest, there's a guest sign-up form on my website as well. Both of those links are in the episode description. Thank you for watching. Stay blessed and stay curious. I'm out.